How can ancient windmills keep an entire village from sinking? And how could another village replace cars with boats so easily? If you think that's impressive, wait until you see a garden that blooms for just 8 weeks, but attracts over 1 million visitors each year. All these places point us towards some of the most charming, unbelievable, and unexpected corners of the Netherlands. But they're just the beginning. Today, we'll uncover a Netherlands few people ever truly see, shaped by water, history, and breathtaking imagination. These are the wonders of the Netherlands. You arrive expecting a museum village, and instead find silence broken only by ducks and wooden oars. In Giethoorn, the road is water and the traffic drifts. Located in Overijssel province within Weerabin-Weiden National Park, Giethoorn is a village without streets in its historic center. Canals replace car lanes, and boats serve as buses. Thatch-roofed cottages sit along narrow waterways, connected by more than 170 arched footbridges. But Giethoorn isn't a fairy tale. It's a living place, shaped by human hands and water for centuries. Tourism surges every summer, filling canals with rental boats and testing the quiet it's known for. The challenge is balance, charm without becoming a caricature. In winter, the canals freeze and skaters glide where boats once passed. Early morning returns the village to itself. Reeds rustle, herons stalk the banks, and locals quietly sweep their stoops. Giethoorn sits within a peat bog landscape, formed by centuries of human peat cutting. The shallow canals were dug by hand to harvest turf for fuel, accidentally creating a water-rich ecosystem now critical to birds, amphibians, and aquatic plants. The village was founded in the 13th century by flagellants and later developed by farmers and peat cutters. The thatched houses, built on small man-made islands, reflect traditional Dutch craftsmanship and adaptation to wetland life. Today, the village carefully manages its popularity, limiting motorboats and encouraging sustainability. Locals still navigate by whisperboat and cherish the times when crowds recede. It begins not with color, but with quiet, rows of soil, bulbs tucked in like secrets. Then April arrives and the earth explodes into bloom. Near Lis in South Holland, Keukenhof transforms into one of the world's most famous spring gardens. Each year, more than 7 million tulip, daffodil, hyacinth, and crocus bulbs get planted by hand across 32 hectares. This creates a living mosaic of Dutch flower growing that attracts over 1 million visitors. But here's what makes it extraordinary. Keukenhof opens for only 8 weeks each spring. Its beauty gets measured in days. Behind every bloom lies precise timing, centuries of plant knowledge, and a race against the season. The contrast is striking. Crowds snap photos in front of striped tulip fields, while nearby greenhouses hum quietly with controlled growth. Outside the gates, working farms cultivate bulbs for export, linking art and industry. The region's sandy soil and cool climate make it perfect for bulb cultivation. Tulips first arrived from the Ottoman Empire in the 1600s, eventually sparking tulip mania, one of history's first economic bubbles. Today, the Netherlands exports billions of flower bulbs annually, with Keukenhof as its glowing showroom. The name Keukenhof means kitchen garden. It originally belonged to a 15th century estate where herbs grew for a castle's kitchen. The modern garden opened in 1949 to showcase Dutch growers and breeders. Keukenhof isn't just a garden, it's a brief, brilliant symphony of timing, tradition, and botanical design. How does a city built on water, tolerance, and trade remain both ancient and constantly reinventing itself? Amsterdam answers this question every day. The Dutch capital feels human-sized despite its global reputation. Canals wind between brick buildings, while bicycles outnumber cars on cobblestone streets. This city was engineered from the start to survive the impossible. Millions of wooden pilings support entire neighborhoods on marshy ground that should never hold buildings this old. The contrasts hit you immediately. 17th century gables tower over electric trams. Street art covers walls steps away from the Golden Age masterpieces. Tourists pack the red light district, while locals enjoy coffee beside canals that haven't changed shape in 4 centuries. Watch the daily rhythm unfold. Houseboats rock gently beneath stone bridges, built when America was still a colony. Cyclists stream past flower stalls and modern tech offices. When evening arrives, church bells ring above streets glowing with LED storefronts. Amsterdam started as a fishing village in the 1200s. By the 1600s, it became one of the world's most important ports during the Dutch Golden Age. The city welcomed thinkers, exiles, and innovators with unusual religious tolerance. That spirit lives on today. Water shapes everything here. Over 100 kilometers of canals connect through 1,200 bridges. Modern Amsterdam leads in climate adaptation with water squares that catch floods and green roofs that cool buildings. The city has more bikes than residents by design. Amsterdam listens to its own rhythm, shaped by tides and minds and movements. It preserves its soul while redesigning it continuously. Before they were symbols, the windmills were lifelines. Built not for charm, but for survival in a land that sits below the sea. Located in South Holland at the junction of the Lek and Noord rivers, Kinderdijk is home to 19 historical windmills, the largest surviving concentration in the Netherlands. Built in the 18th century, they form a system designed to drain excess water from the polders and prevent flooding in one of the lowest countries on Earth. Today, Kinderdijk draws tourists from around the world, their cameras aimed at spinning blades and watery reflections. But its beauty hides constant tension between human design and natural threat, between heritage and modern flood control. Cyclists glide between the windmills in silence, while beneath the surface, canals, pumps, and weirs still shift water away from farmland and homes. Nearby, state-of-the-art diesel and electric stations now do what the wind once powered. But the old mills still stand ready, functional, and symbolic. Nearly a third of the Netherlands lies below sea level. The Dutch have spent centuries engineering their relationship with water. Building dikes, sluices, and polder systems that control its rise and movement. Kinderdijk exemplifies this ingenuity. The name Kinderdijk, Children's Dyke, comes from a 15th century legend in which a baby in a cradle, kept balanced by a cat, floated to safety during the St. Elizabeth flood. The story, like the structures themselves, blends fact with enduring symbolism. Salt air, shifting dunes, and the low rhythm of distant waves. Texel feels less like a destination and more like a boundary between land, sea, and sky. The largest of the Dutch Wadden Islands, Texel lies just off the coast of North Holland. Though only about 25 kilometers long, It contains an astonishing range of landscapes. Sandy beaches stretch alongside sheep-dotted fields. Tidal flats meet pine forests. Salt marshes blend into cycling paths. All of this sits surrounded by the restless North Sea. Texel exists between two natures, wild and managed. Its ecosystems are delicate, yet many are shaped by centuries of human influence. Natural processes meet careful intervention here. Storms, migration, and agriculture all share tight space. On one end, windswept dunes roll toward De Sloofder, a tidal inlet where saltwater floods a marsh thick with sea lavender. On the other, red-roofed villages and cycling paths carve order into the green interior. Flocks of Arctic birds rest here in winter. Tourists arrive in summer. Texel belongs to the Waddensee UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most important tidal ecosystems in the world. Twice daily, the tide recedes to reveal vast mudflats, rich with life. Seals bask in sandbanks. Spoonbills, curlews, and avocets feed in the shallows. Islanders raise the famed Texel sheep, produce local cheeses and beer, and maintain a strong maritime identity. Museums like Ecomare educate visitors on marine conservation and the island's role in protecting both sea life and shoreline. You smell wood shavings and oil before you even see the blades turn. Then the wind hits, and a row of green-painted windmills creak softly to life along the Zaanse River. Just north of Amsterdam, Zaanse Schans looks like someone built a fairy tale village. But this preserved Dutch settlement tells the real story of how the Netherlands became a global power. Over 1,000 windmills once lined this river, powering saws that cut timber, presses that squeezed oil from seeds, grinders that mixed paint, and mills that turned grain into flour. What you see now captures the industrial heart that beat here for centuries. The scene feels almost too perfect, like a movie set, but step closer and you'll discover something surprising. These windmills actually work. While tourists walk the wooden paths taking photos, craftsmen inside sharpen saw blades, press fresh linseed oil, and bake bread in ovens heated by peat fires. Tour boats arrive every few minutes, yet the old clog workshop machines still whir as they carve wooden shoes. Next door, a cheesemaker pours warm curds into molds. During the Dutch Golden Age, this area powered much of the nation's economy. The Zaanse region became one of the world's first true industrial zones, as important as any major port. These mills pumped water from flooded land, processed raw materials, and created a model of local production that worked in harmony with wind and water. Zaanse Schans preserves more than old buildings. It keeps alive the rhythm of a time when the past turned with the wind. What does a city become when it's destroyed, then given total freedom to start again? Rotterdam answers that question in the most striking way possible. Unlike any other Dutch city, Rotterdam was flattened by German bombs on May 14, 1940. Hundreds died, and tens of thousands lost their homes. But instead of rebuilding what was lost, the city chose something radical: complete reinvention. Today, Rotterdam is Europe's largest port and a living experiment in bold architecture. You'll find contrasts everywhere you look. Historic canals meet jagged steel towers. Brutalist concrete stands beside gleaming glass. Shipping cranes tower over rooftop farms that grow vegetables 30 feet above the street. Walk through 17th century Delftshaven with its cobblestone streets and church towers, then turn a corner to see the angular cube houses tilted at impossible angles. The Erasmus Bridge stretches across the water like a giant harp, while the horseshoe-shaped market hall pulses with neon lights and the scent of international foods. This port city stretches 40 kilometers to the North Sea, handling more cargo than any other European port. As a delta city sitting below sea level, Rotterdam leads the world in climate adaptation. Water plazas collect rainwater during storms. Green roofs absorb excess moisture. Floating bridges rise and fall with changing water levels. Rotterdam's population represents one of Europe's most diverse communities, creating vibrant neighborhoods like Katendrecht and hosting major cultural events throughout the year. This isn't a city that rebuilds, it's a city that constantly rethinks what's possible. What happens when a landscape dug for profit becomes a playground, then slowly reveals its quiet wildness again? Between Amsterdam and Utrecht, you'll find the Loosdrechtse Plassen, or Loosdrecht Lakes. This chain of shallow, connected lakes stretches across marshy islands and reed beds that feel completely natural. But here's the twist. People created this entire waterscape by accident. Starting in the Middle Ages, workers dug peat from this land to use as fuel. They hollowed out the ground piece by piece over centuries. When they finished, water filled those empty spaces, creating the lakes you see today. What began as a resource extraction turned into something beautiful. Today, the lakes buzz with weekend sailors and summer swimmers. Expensive villas line some shores with private docks where speedboats wait. Jet skis zip across open water while families picnic on floating platforms. But step away from the busy spots and you'll discover a different world. Narrow boardwalks lead to hidden bird hides tucked deep in the reeds. Great crested grebes build floating nests here. And herons wade through shallow inlets where dragonflies hover over water lilies. The same lake that hosts loud parties becomes a peaceful sanctuary at sunrise. These lakes form part of the larger Vechtplassen wetland system. The reed beds work as natural water filters, and several zones hold protected status under European conservation laws. The shallow water stays sensitive to pollution, creating a constant balance between recreation and preservation. You hear the bells before you see the towers. Then the canal curves and Delft appears. A city painted in calm tones, but built on quiet revolutions. Nestled between The Hague and Rotterdam, Delft feels like stepping into a living painting. You'll recognize those famous blue and white pottery patterns everywhere, but this city balances so much more than artistic beauty. Medieval charm meets cutting-edge innovation on every corner. Students bike past centuries-old canals, while researchers at the Technical University work on quantum computers and sustainable energy systems that will shape tomorrow's world. This contrast runs deep through Delft's history. During the 16th and 17th centuries, the city became a powerhouse for painters, potters, and princes. Johan Vermeer captured its special light in masterpieces we still admire today. The House of Orange chose Delft for their royal tombs, which you can visit in the towering Nieuwe Kerk. But the city faced tragedy too. A massive gunpowder explosion in 1654 destroyed a third of Delft, yet the community rebuilt stronger than before. Today's Delft blue pottery originally copied Chinese porcelain designs, but Dutch craftsmen made the style uniquely their own. Meanwhile, TU Delft has become one of Europe's top technical universities, pioneering everything from aerospace engineering to water management systems. Delft doesn't need to shout about its achievements. It simply refines them, building beauty into function and weaving past achievements into future breakthroughs. The city hums with quiet confidence, like those bells that don't need volume to carry their message across the canals. It's only when the train pulls away that you hear it. Church bells, footsteps on stone, and the hush of a smaller city that doesn't need to announce itself. Just 20 minutes west of Amsterdam, Haarlem feels like its softer, slower reflection. You'll find narrow streets that curve around hidden hofjes, those peaceful courtyards tucked behind wooden doors. Golden afternoon light catches the brick facades just right. This city has roots stretching back over 1,000 years. It was once one of the most important places in the Netherlands, a major center for trade, religion, and art. Today, Haarlem balances heritage and modern life with surprising care. The city stays compact but cosmopolitan. Historical architecture fills every corner, yet boutiques, cafes, and galleries bring fresh energy to ancient streets. Inside the Groote Kerk, sunlight filters through stained glass onto the same floor where Frans Hals once walked. Step outside and cyclists pass beneath Art Nouveau facades, heading to flower markets or microbreweries. During the Dutch Golden Age, Haarlem flourished as an art and printing center. Frans Hals captured the easy spirit of its citizens in his paintings. Meanwhile, printing houses spread ideas across Europe. The city's location near coastal dunes made it a key defense point and later the heart of the Dutch tulip trade. Today, Haarlem remains the center of the bulb-growing region. Carefree zones and bike paths connect the city to nearby Zuid-Kennemerle National Park. Beauty here moves slower, stays closer, and travels lighter. How does a city feel both ancient and alive, like it was carved from time but never stopped breathing? Utrecht sits right in the heart of the Netherlands, one of its oldest cities that started as a Roman fortress in 47 AD. The Dom Tower still rises above everything else, marking the city's center where streets spiral inward and canals dip lower than anywhere else in the country. This medieval hub transformed into a modern cultural core, yet it never lost its original character. Here's what makes Utrecht fascinating. It doesn't try to impress you. No flashy attractions or tourist traps. But it's actually one of the fastest growing, most dynamic cities in the Netherlands. You'll find innovation hubs operating next to ancient churches, experimental art galleries sharing streets with centuries-old monasteries, walk through Utrecht and you'll see students from the country's largest university passing beneath cathedral arches. Cyclists flow beside canals that once loaded trading ships, now lined with cafes carved into their old cellars. High-tech companies set up offices just steps from medieval cloisters. The Dom Tower tells an interesting story too. When a 17th century storm destroyed parts of the cathedral, the city kept the broken space as living memory instead of rebuilding. Today, Utrecht leads in sustainable urban planning. Turning old highways into green spaces and parking lots into bike lanes. Those unique medieval canal wharves, once bustling with trade, now blend water, stone, and modern culture. It begins in gradients of color, of terrain, of silence. Veluwezoom doesn't overwhelm. It unfolds like mist rising through heath at first light. This is the Netherlands' oldest national park, established in 1930 near Arnhem in Gelderland. Picture over 5,000 hectares where ancient Ice Age glaciers carved out sandy ridges that still roll across the landscape today. You'll find red deer stepping quietly through beech and oak forests, while the larger Veluwe region stretches beyond the park boundaries. What makes Veluwezoom special isn't just its age. Unlike the flat countryside you expect in the Netherlands, this landscape rises and falls in gentle waves. The terrain creates its own weather patterns and wildlife corridors. But there's tension here too, between visitors seeking recreation and conservationists protecting fragile ecosystems between managed woodlands and areas returning to their wild state. Walk to Postbank Viewpoint in August and you'll see purple heather blooming across the ridges. Down in the valleys, morning fog clings to thick pine woods, while wild boar leave fresh tracks in the sandy soil. The park hosts dry heath, mixed forests, drifting sand dunes, and old farmland slowly transforming back into wilderness. For centuries, people grazed livestock here, harvested timber, and used the land for military training. Today, wildlife corridors connect Veluwezoom to other Veluwe reserves, allowing pine martens, badgers, and nightjars to move freely across a much larger ecosystem. You enter through a gate older than your country. And as you walk the cobbled streets, you wonder, how has Amersfoort stayed so intact while changing so much? Located in the province of Utrecht, Amersfoort sits near the geographic center of the Netherlands. What began as a medieval trade hub surrounded by defensive walls has grown into a thriving mid-sized city known for its livability, layered architecture, and balance between heritage and progress. Amersfoort wears its history with precision, not nostalgia. The old city center is beautifully preserved, but just outside the walls, glass, rail, and bike lanes reveal a city constantly rethinking itself. The Koppelpoort, a 14th century water gate, stands firm as cyclists glide past. Within the old city, brick alleys and gables lead to bookstores and wine bars. Beyond, modern neighborhoods like Vathorst stretch out in organized grids, planned but evolving. First mentioned in the 11th century, Amersfoort gained city rights in 1259. It flourished through the cloth trade, beer brewing, and later as a religious center. The city's double canal ring, a rarity, was part of its defensive and economic strength. Its medieval walls remain among the best preserved in the country. Amersfoort blends tradition and creativity. It's the birthplace of Piet Mondrian, whose geometric abstractions echo the city's quiet sense of order. Museums, festivals, and live music are integrated into everyday life rather than set apart from it. Here, the water moves slowly, not in stillness, but in thought. Leiden isn't a city that shouts, it teaches. Nestled between The Hague and Amsterdam, Leiden spreads across canals like an open book. Red-roofed buildings lean toward narrow waterways, while brick alleys wind past quiet courtyards where students read under old trees. This university town has shaped science, art, and politics in ways that reach far beyond its modern size. Walk these streets and you'll feel the contrasts everywhere. Students on bikes pedal past botanical gardens where modern biology first took root. Cafes buzz with conversation on the same cobblestones that once sheltered revolutionaries, refugees, and pilgrims planning their journey to America. One moment you're standing outside Rembrandt's birthplace on Wiedensteeg. Next, you're beneath a telescope dome where Einstein once shared his theories with fascinated crowds. The city earned its scholarly reputation through struggle. After surviving a brutal Spanish siege in 1574, Leiden received its university as a reward, Europe's oldest Protestant institution. By the 1600s, printing presses churned out books, while cloth merchants built fortunes. The Hortus Botanicus, founded in 1590, introduced tulips to Western Europe and pioneered medical plant research. Here, Antony van Leeuwenhoek peered through his microscopes to discover bacteria, changing science forever. Today, 1/3 of Leiden's residents are students. Libraries fill with researchers, museums showcase centuries of discovery, and canal-side benches invite quiet reflection. Leiden doesn't demand attention, it earns it through steady brilliance. What do hills mean in a land built on flatness? In Montferland, they mean memory of old forests, borderlands, and stories whispered into trees. Tucked in the eastern provinces of Gelderland, along the German border, the Montferland Hills rise unexpectedly from flat farmland. Ice Age glaciers carved these wooden ridges and rolling slopes thousands of years ago. They stand as one of the Netherlands' few naturally elevated landscapes, surrounded by river plains that stretch endlessly in every direction. Montferland feels set apart from the rest of the country. Dense beech forests wrap around ancient trails where castle ruins peek through the trees. The area isn't dramatic or showy, but it draws you in quietly. This peaceful landscape holds layers of history, centuries of border crossings, invasions, and cultural exchange between Dutch and German communities. From the hilltop lookout tower in Zaherenberg, you can see how the land flattens completely around you. Hikers move from deep, shaded forest paths into open heather fields. Cyclists climb narrow ridges that feel more German than Dutch, reminding you how artificial national borders really are. The forests support deer, badgers, and tawny owls, among native beech and oak trees. Forest managers have maintained these woodlands for centuries, balancing biodiversity with recreation. Dutch athletes even train here, since hills are so rare in their homeland. Local legends speak of witches, hidden gold, and haunted trees. Haar Castle, one of the Netherlands' largest, watches over everything like a guardian from another era. At first, Volendam feels like a postcard comes to life. Striped dresses hang in shop windows, pointed white caps catch the breeze, and vendors offer smoked eels served in paper trays. The narrow harbor sparkles with colorful wooden boats, while tourists snap photos against picture-perfect backdrops. But stay longer and this fishing village becomes less frozen in time and more genuinely lived in. Located on the Marken just north of Amsterdam, Volendam transformed from a working harbor into a national symbol. Artists once flocked here to paint the dramatic skies in traditional costumes. Now, visitors come searching for authentic Dutch culture. Though what they find walks a careful line between preserving heritage and performing it. While tourists pose in rented folk costumes near the crowded harbor cafes, older residents quietly walk home from Sunday church services. Behind the main tourist strip, winding residential alleys lead to weathered boat sheds and small homes that families have occupied for generations. These quiet streets tell a different story than the bustling waterfront. Founded in the 14th century as a harbor for nearby Edam, Volendam developed its own fishing identity over centuries. When the Zuiderzee Works and Afsluitdijk transformed the open sea into a lake during the 20th century, the community shifted from fishing to tourism. Yet many traditions survived this economic transformation. The village maintains its Catholic heritage in a largely Protestant region and continues producing Dutch folk and pop musicians. Entire families of performers call Volendam home, speaking their distinct local dialect and maintaining close social bonds that tourists rarely glimpse. What happens when a city is carved by 3 countries, 3 tongues, and 2,000 years of footsteps? You get Maastricht, tucked at the Netherlands' southernmost tip between Belgium and Germany. This feels like a European crossroads rather than a typical Dutch city. It's older than Amsterdam, softer than Rotterdam, and completely removed from the busy Randstad region up north. Roman ruins sit beneath medieval walls, while sidewalk cafes buzz with conversations, mixing Dutch, French, and German naturally. Maastricht is Dutch, but not quite. The architecture leans Romanesque and French instead of the typical Dutch brick. Locals prefer wine over beer, limestone over canal houses, and cobbled hills over flat polders. This city carries Limburg's regional culture proudly and separately from the rest of the Netherlands. Walk beneath centuries-old churches and you'll find Roman baths and catacombs from when the settlement began around 50 CE. Students from across Europe fill sunlit squares, while locals light candles in dim chapels nearby. You can stroll from Gothic basilicas to modern art spaces in just 10 minutes. The Meuse River cuts straight through the city center. Once a major trade route, it now serves as a visual anchor. Maastricht University draws international students, adding to the city's global atmosphere, while regional Limburg traditions keep the local identity strong. Maastricht represents where the Netherlands stretches and blends. It's less about borders and more about bridges. This city feels layered, lived in, and always a little elsewhere. The wind never stops in Terschelling. It sings through dunes, sweeps across tidal flats, and bends grasses like prayer. This island doesn't fight the sea, it listens to it. Terschelling sits in the Wadden Sea off Friesland's north coast. It's one of the larger Dutch barrier islands, stretching like a narrow ribbon of sand, dune, marsh, and forest. About 5,000 people call it home. Here, nature leads and humans follow. This island lives between extremes. Most of the year, it's a windswept sanctuary where birds rest and quiet walkers explore empty beaches. Then June arrives with the Oral Festival. Thousands of visitors flood in for performances that turn the entire island into a stage. Art and nature share the same space. West Terschelling Village huddles beside the 400-year-old Branderis Lighthouse. This tower has guided sailors and seal watchers for centuries. Travel east and you'll find the Boschplatte, a wild nature reserve where night falls dark enough to reveal the Milky Way. Terschelling belongs to the Waddenzee UNESCO World Heritage Site. This massive system of sand and mudflats supports spoonbills, seals, rare orchids, and migrating birds from distant continents. The island's dunes, salt marshes, and tidal zones create homes for wildlife you won't find anywhere else. Local peoples speak their own dialect and share maritime traditions passed down through generations. Shipwreck stories and sea lore fill evening conversations. Terschelling doesn't try to tame its environment, it lives with it, shaped by tides and time. You walk its wide boulevards and wonder, how does a city so powerful remain so understated? The Hague sits on the Netherlands' western coast, quietly holding more influence than most world capitals. This is where Dutch laws get written, where the royal family lives, and where diplomacy happens behind elegant historic buildings. You won't find flashy monuments or tourist crowds here. Instead, you'll discover a city that wields power through calm confidence. Here's what makes The Hague fascinating. It's not officially the capital, but it acts like one. The Dutch Parliament meets here. The Supreme Court makes its rulings here. Over 150 international organizations call this place home, including the International Court of Justice. Yet, when you walk these streets, it feels almost residential. Step inside the Binnenhof, where politicians debate policies that affect millions. Walk 3 blocks away and you'll find children playing under ancient trees in the Haagse. Judges wearing black robes decide cases about global war crimes, while Indonesian restaurants and Art Deco cafes serve lunch nearby. This city started as a 13th century hunting lodge for the Counts of Holland. While Amsterdam became the official capital, The Hague remained the administrative heart. The Peace Palace houses the world's highest courts under carved ceilings and oil paintings. The Mauritius displays Vermeer masterpieces. Just west at Scheveningen Beach, locals surf while diplomats watch waves from hotel balconies. You cross the bridge and the town opens in reflection. Boats line the quay, old sails folded like stories, water touching every corner. Lemmer feels lived in, but never still. Located at the edge of Friesland, on the IJsselmeer, Lemmer stands as one of the province's best-known water towns. This former fishing port turned recreational hub centers around the Lemsterreen, the canal that slices through town, linking lake, sea, and shipyard. The waterway connects everything here. Lemmer moves between work and weekend. Its identity was built on industry, fishing, shipbuilding, water engineering. Today, it draws tourists, sailors, and summer homes. That shift hasn't erased its roots, just softened their edges. On one side, sleek yachts dock in the marina. On the other, the old lifeboat house stands sturdy, and flat-bottomed scootskis recall Lemmer's working-class maritime history. Ice cream shops and rope cleats share the same planks. Lemmer once thrived as a herring port and gateway to the Zuiderzee. When the Afsluitdijk closed the sea in 1932, everything changed. Fishing declined and the town turned inland. But Lemmer remained vital thanks to its strategic position and the imposing Woude Jamal nearby, the largest steam-powered pumping station still in operation, now a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The Woude Jamal still helps regulate water levels across Friesland. The town celebrates its nautical legacy and scoots Jesselin sailing races, local shipyards, and museums that speak to a life built in rhythm with tides and tools. Lemmer floats between centuries, anchored by craft, buoyed by change. The silence here feels curated, not empty, but attentive. In the Hoge Veluwe, nature unfolds like a canvas, layered, studied, alive. This isn't your typical national park experience. It's something much more thoughtful. Located in Gelderland, the Hoge Veluwe covers 5,400 hectares of heathland, forest, drift sand, and grassland. Here's what makes it special. It's privately owned and completely fenced. This is a deliberate landscape, shaped as much by careful stewardship as by natural processes. You enter through controlled gates and pick up one of their famous white bicycles, completely silent as you ride through the park. The contrast here will surprise you. Bronze sculptures appear between ancient trees. A modernist museum sits in the middle of a centuries-old forest. In one direction, you'll spot a buzzard circling high above sand drifts. In another, you walk straight into a Van Gogh painting. Red deer graze peacefully in open meadows, while wild boar rustle through the underbrush nearby. The park sits on a glacial ridge from the last ice age. This varied terrain supports incredible biodiversity. Mouflon sheep, badgers, pine martens, and over 200 bird species call this place home. Rangers use controlled grazing, careful burning, and selective forestry to maintain the open heath and prevent the landscape from becoming stagnant. At the heart sits the Kröller-Müller Museum, housing one of the world's largest Van Gogh collections plus an expansive sculpture garden. The park was developed in the early 1900s by Anton and Helene Kröller-Müller as part nature reserve, part cultural vision. The Hoge Veluwe proves that wildness and human vision can create something extraordinary together. What happens to a place when the sea pulls back, but the past holds on? Marken gives us the perfect answer. This former island sits in the Markermeer, now connected to the mainland by a single narrow causeway. Green wooden houses cluster together like ships that found safe harbor and decided to stay. They're built on stilts and artificial mounds called turpin, rising above the landscape that once flooded with every storm. Walk through Marken today and you'll see something fascinating. Tourists snap photos beside those famous green houses, hunting for the perfect shot. Meanwhile, locals chat quietly in the harbor cafe, going about their daily routines. You might spot someone wearing traditional Marken dress, striped skirts, white caps, wooden shoes. But here's the thing, they could be posing for visitors or heading to a family funeral. The costume serves both purposes. For centuries, Marken survived as a fishing village, completely cut off when storms hit. Before the Afsluitdijk Dam changed everything, the Zuiderzee's tides and tempests shaped every aspect of life here. People learned to be completely self-sufficient. They developed their own dialect, their own customs, even their own burial traditions that you won't find anywhere else in the Netherlands. The narrow lanes wind between low houses and small gardens under that endless Dutch sky. About 1,800 people still call this place home, keeping traditions alive not for show, but because they're part of who they are. Seen from above, Bourtange is a star, sharp-edged, deliberate, and still. But walk its bridge and it becomes a memory underfoot. This tiny village sits near the German border in Groningen province, and it's unlike anywhere else you'll visit. Bourtange is a 16th century star fort that's been completely restored to its original design. Moats surround the entire village. Wooden bridges connect the bastions. Every street follows the same pattern it did over 400 years ago. Here's what makes this place fascinating. People actually live here. Real families call this fortress home. The ramparts that once repelled Spanish armies now frame a village where residents go about their daily lives inside the lines of history. You'll see children playing in courtyards where soldiers once stood guard. The contrast is striking. During summer, reenactors in red coats fire muskets on schedule. Just steps away, someone sips coffee in the cobbled square, while goats graze peacefully beneath the ramparts. The same layout designed for warfare now hosts candlelit evenings and quiet bicycle rides. William of Orange ordered Bourtange built in 1580 to control the road between Germany and Groningen City. The star-shaped design with 5 bastions and deep moats could withstand siege warfare. It stayed active militarily until 1851, then slowly faded until restoration in the 1960s brought it back to life. The radical design isn't just defense, it's visual logic. Streets, canals, and houses spread outward from the center, creating a perfect example of Renaissance military planning. You arrive expecting cheese, and you find stained glass, water-laced streets, in a town that's quietly outlived fire, flood, and fame. Gouda sits where rivers and canals cross in South Holland, shaped by centuries of water and trade. Sure, its name appears on cheese wheels worldwide, but the city's real story runs much deeper. This is a place of craft, resistance, and quiet endurance, hidden behind stepped gables and flickering candlelight. Walk through Gouda and you'll notice something interesting. It feels like a simple market town, welcoming and easy to explore. Yet within this small city center, you'll find some of the Netherlands' oldest stained glass windows, deepest political scars, and richest artisanal traditions. Picture the marked square on a summer Thursday. Cheese wheels get hoisted and weighed under a 17th century city hall, just like they have for generations. Walk around the corner and you'll see St. Janskirk, stretching over 120 meters long. It's the longest church in the Netherlands, famous for stunning 16th century stained glass that somehow survived war and Reformation. Gouda gained city rights back in 1272. Through the Middle Ages, it thrived as a center for beer brewing, pottery, and candle making. Those iconic Goodsie Carson, the long, slow-burning candles, are still made by hand today. The city weathered major fires, economic collapse, and religious upheaval, yet preserved its medieval layout and civic pride. Every December, thousands gather for Gouda by candlelight, when darkened streets glow only with candles in shop windows. Some cities rise. Zutphen endures, a place where towers keep watch and time echoes softly off brick. Walk along the Ijssel River in Gelderland and you'll find this Hanseatic city that's been home to people for over 1,700 years. Romans first settled here, then medieval lords built their stronghold, and later merchants made it a busy trading hub in the powerful Hanseatic League. Today, church spires and old watchtowers still pierce the skyline, while cobblestone streets curve exactly as they did centuries ago. Zutphen carries its age without weight. You won't find flashy tourist attractions here. Instead, you'll discover beauty and how old things still work perfectly. Shoppers browse beneath Gothic arches, while morning river fog drifts between modern cafes and ancient warehouses. Cyclists pedal through gates that once protected the city from enemy armies. Inside the Librige, a 16th century chained library, books rest exactly where monks placed them hundreds of years ago. This city earned its official rights back in the 12th century, making it one of the Netherlands' oldest. Hanseatic trade brought incredible wealth through the Ijssel River, connecting inland Europe to the North Sea. That prosperity built impressive churches, civic buildings, and defensive walls you can still explore today. Green spaces blend naturally with historic architecture here. Dikes, floodplains, and nature preserves border the city, creating an exceptional quality of life. Cultural events regularly fill these quiet spaces with fresh energy, while sustainable living remains a priority for residents. What happens when a ruin is rebuilt, not to restore history, but to reimagine it? Rising from manicured gardens near Utrecht, the Haar Castle is the largest and most luxurious castle in the Netherlands. But its grandeur isn't medieval. Reconstructed in the late 19th century on the foundations of a 14th century ruin, it's a vision of nobility crafted by architects, aristocrats, and pure imagination. De Haar looks ancient, but isn't. Its towers, drawbridges, and gates are genuine reconstructions, made with modern materials and Belle Epoque flair. It's a castle that's both authentic and artificial, a noble home built as a stage. Inside, velvet drapes and carved oak meet electric chandeliers and imported Italian marble. Outside, the transformation was even more dramatic. Entire villages were moved, roads rerouted, and gardens designed down to the last rose arch. Baron Etienne van Zuylen van Nijevelt van de Haar, backed by his Rothschild wife's immense fortune, commissioned Pierre Cuypers, the same architect behind Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum and Central Station. Their shared vision wasn't medieval revival, but aristocratic theater. De Haar wasn't just a home, it was a stage for power and reputation. In the 20th century, it hosted Coco Chanel, Brigitte Bardot, and European royalty. The family lived there only 1 month each year, entertaining with full spectacle, while the castle stood quiet the rest of the time. De Haar is a fantasy made stone, where heritage wasn't preserved, but rewritten with purpose. In Dokkum, the water curves in circles, like a memory defending itself. Some places are not loud in their history, but deeply rooted in it. Located in the northern province of Friesland, Dokkum is one of the Netherlands' oldest and best preserved fortified towns. Encircled by moats and bastions, it's a city where streets follow defense lines and legends still shape the land. This is most famously the place where Saint Boniface was martyred in 754. Dokkum lives between history and stillness. Its past is dramatic, conquests, saints, rebellion, but its present is peaceful. Quiet canals, brick facades, and streets built for walking and remembering. It feels untouched, yet has been rebuilt many times. You stand on a windmill-capped bastion, looking down at houseboats floating in a perfect crescent. One turn leads to a museum, another to a monastery garden. The town's scale is small, but the weight of time is immense. Dokkum's religious significance begins with the murder of Boniface, the English missionary whose death here marked a turning point in the Christianization of the northern Netherlands. The town later became a regional trading post, received city rights in 1298, and developed strong defenses during the 80 Years' War, bastions and walls that still shape the city's form today. As part of Friesland, Dokkum reflects Frisian identity, with its own language, traditions, and symbols. It's the northernmost point of the famous Elfstedentocht ice skating tour, and its fountains, churches, and small museums reflect pride and quiet endurance. What if a city were designed not to sprawl, but to resist, to hold its shape against history itself? Located in North Holland, Naarden answers this question perfectly. This town stands as one of Europe's best preserved star forts, wrapped in 6 sharp bastions and surrounded by dual moats that create perfect symmetry. The Dutch built this fortress as part of their defense line, and today its precise geometry protects a peaceful city center filled with narrow brick streets, cozy art galleries, and quiet courtyards. Naarden was built for pressure, but now it offers only calm. This creates a beautiful contradiction, a place shaped for violence that delivers nothing but stillness and order. When you climb onto one of the bastions, you'll see swans gliding through moats that once stopped enemy armies. Inside the walls, you'll find local bakeries, hidden courtyards, and the impressive Grootkirk, where classical music fills the air between centuries-old wooden beams and stone pillars. The town's history runs deep and sometimes dark. Spanish forces massacred nearly the entire population here in 1572, leaving scars that locals still remember. Later, Naarden became part of the Dutch waterline defense system, which used controlled flooding to keep invaders away. The fortress played important roles through World War II. Today, this symmetrical town draws history lovers and architecture fans who come for classical concerts, art festivals, and war memorials. Naarden proves that some cities aren't just defended, they're defined by intention, held together by water and memory. Some towns breathe in straight lines. Elburg does, a perfect grid drawn in brick and moat, still echoing with the hush of sails and scripture. Picture this. You're standing at the edge of the Veluwe in Gelderland, looking at what seems impossible. A perfectly rectangular medieval town that someone literally picked up and moved in 1392. The entire city was rebuilt on a strict grid after a planned relocation. This wasn't some modern urban planning experiment. This was medieval Europe, where most towns grew organically around market squares and river bends. Elburg once ruled as a vital Hanseatic trading port on the Zuiderzee. Ships loaded with goods from across northern Europe docked at its bustling harbor. But here's what makes this story fascinating. When the sea retreated after the creation of the Sluitdijk, transforming the Zuiderzee into a lake, Elburg's harbor became obsolete overnight. What could have destroyed the town actually preserved it perfectly. Walk through the Vishpoort Gate today and you'll step into narrow alleys that haven't shifted in 600 years. Church bells still ring from the Grootkerk. Wind still whistles past the now silent harbor. The town's grid plan was rare in medieval Europe, likely influenced by military and theological ideals of perfect order. Museums, craft shops, and festivals like the Botterdagen celebrate its historic fishing vessels. Remnants of Jewish history and Protestant foundations give the town both gravity and grace. Elburg remains a city drawn with precision, but lived with softness. What remains in a city that once launched ships to the corner of the world? In Hoorn, the harbor still answers with silence, sails, and stone. Walk along the Markermeer waterfront, and you're standing where Dutch East India Company ships once prepared for journeys that would change the world. Hoorn wasn't just another port town. It was a headquarters for global empire, sending vessels to Indonesia, South Africa, and beyond. The wealth that flowed back built the golden facades you see today. But here's what makes Hoorn fascinating now. Those same 17th century warehouses house modern art galleries and cozy cafes. Where spice merchants once counted profits, local families now run bakeries serving Turkish bread and Moroccan pastries. The harbor that welcomed treasure ships now hosts weekend sailors and historic vessels that teach rather than conquer. You can trace this transformation block by block. Streets named after famous explorers lead to museums that honestly examine the VOC's role in slavery and exploitation. The Westfries Museum displays both the porcelain and silver that made the city rich, and the stories of people who paid the price for that wealth. Cape Horn at the tip of South America still carries Hoorn's name. Ships still dock in the harbor during summer festivals. But the wind that once carried the Dutch Empire now carries something different. Questions about the past, conversations about the future, and the quiet sounds of a city learning to live with its own complex history. Here, the sails are smaller, but the wind still speaks of oceans. In Enkhuizen, history moors quietly beside everyday life. Walk through this harbor town on the Ijsselmeer, and you'll step into what was once the center of the world. During the Dutch Golden Age, Enkhuizen competed directly with Amsterdam as a powerhouse of international trade. Ships from the Dutch East India Company filled these waters, while the largest herring fleet in the entire country called this port home. The wealth flowed into ornate churches, grand schools, and those distinctive gabled houses that still line the waterfront today. But here's what makes Enkhuizen special. It never became a museum. Children still play along the same dikes that once protected a trading empire. Cyclists pedal to work past warehouses that stored spices from Indonesia. Modern yachts bob next to restored 17th century ships in the harbor. You can grab coffee in a cafe housed inside a former weighing house where merchants once measured their fortunes. Cross a wooden drawbridge that still opens for boats, then find yourself face to face with a working windmill. The Zuiderzee Museum preserves entire buildings and traditional crafts from across the region, telling stories of communities that lived with and against the sea for centuries. The IJsselmeer itself holds secrets. Once a saltwater bay called the Zuiderzee, it's now freshwater, completely changing the fish, the farming, and the ecological balance of the region. Enkhuizen floats in time rather than being frozen by it. You arrive at high tide, and the water laps gently at the quay. The flags don't snap, they flutter, as if Veer knows the wind, but no longer rushes to meet it. This small harbor town sits on what was once Walcheren Island in Zeeland Province. Veer looks simple enough. Stepped gables line cobbled streets. A great church towers over everything, and boats bob quietly in the harbor. But for centuries, this tiny place connected the Netherlands to Scotland, England, and the entire North Sea trading world. Walk through Veer today and you'll find stillness everywhere. Yachts rest where merchant ships once crowded the docks. Visitors sip coffee under the stone town hall tower, completely unaware that Scottish wool, Baltic grain, and royal fleets once moved through these same waters. The preserved building faces and silent port whisper stories of when wealth and foreign languages filled the market square. In 1444, Veer became Scotland's official staple port. Every bale of Scottish wool heading to European markets had to pass through here first. The town grew rich, collecting tariffs and hosting international merchants. You can still see this prosperity carved into the 15th century town hall and sculpted into warehouse windows. The massive Grote Kerk, once a Protestant church, now serves as a cultural center, its huge interior still echoing the town's former importance. The river doesn't rush, it curves, it listens. The Drentsche Aa is not shaped by engineers. It still follows the land, the seasons, and the memory of rain. Flowing gently through northeastern Drenthe, the Drentsche Aa is the last remaining river system in the Netherlands that still meanders through its original course. This isn't just a stream. It's an entire cultural and ecological landscape where old farms, heathland, forests, and brook valleys weave into one of the country's most intact rural environments. In a nation defined by control over water, the Drentsche Aa is an exception, protected for how little it's been changed. But that freedom is fragile. Climate pressures, agriculture, and tourism all push against its quiet resilience. While much of the Netherlands is defined by straight canals and engineered flows, here the river bends naturally, feeding peat bogs and ancient meadows. You might pass a shepherd leading sheep over heath, then stumble across Bronze Age burial mounds in a forest clearing. As a national park and Natura 2000 site, the area supports rich biodiversity. Kingfishers, otters, rare orchids, and dragonflies thrive in its shallow waters and moist grasslands. Sandy driftlands remain as relics of prehistoric grazing and wind erosion. The region is dotted with traditional esdorpen, clustered medieval villages surrounded by communal fields and grazing lands. The human footprint here is old, but light, layered into the land, not pressed upon it. What happens to an island when it's no longer surrounded by water, but still refuses to drift into sameness? Picture Urk in Flevoland, once a true island in the Zuiderzee. For centuries, this rugged fishing community sat isolated by water and character. The completion of the Asflutdijk in 1932 and the Noordoostpolder in 1942 changed everything. Urk became physically connected to the mainland. But culturally, it remains apart, proud and deeply rooted in its past. Walk through Urk today and you'll see fascinating contrasts everywhere. Fish auctions hum with digital systems, while the town square displays memorials to lost fishermen. Teenagers scroll smartphones in houses where Urkers have lived for generations. Traditional church services pack pews each Sunday, even as the harbor modernizes around them. This isn't accidental. Urk appears in written records from the 10th century. For nearly 1,000 years, it survived off the sea, isolated and deeply religious. The post-war connection to the mainland didn't dissolve its independence. Even today, Urk speaks its own dialect and votes unlike anywhere else in the country. Fishing remains central here. Urk's fleet ranks among the largest in the Netherlands, and its fish auction draws buyers from across Europe. The lighthouse, standing since 1844, overlooks a sea that has become land, yet still defines the town's horizon. Urk is no longer an island, but it hasn't stopped being one. Identity runs deeper than water here, carried in names, nets, and prayer. The wind here doesn't rush, it smooths. In Zouteland, everything moves slowly. The tide, the clouds, the thoughts you brought with you. This coastal village sits on the Walcheren coast in Zeeland, part of what locals call the Zeeland Riviera. These south-facing beaches are rare in the Netherlands, and high dunes shelter the village from inland winds. Artists have been coming here for decades, drawn by the special quality of light. Families spread towels on the sand, while sunseekers claim spots along the protected shoreline. Even during busy summer months, Zouteland keeps its calm feeling. It's more like hitting pause than joining a crowd. You'll find an interesting mix here. Children build sandcastles right next to German World War II bunkers that are slowly disappearing into the dunes. Hikers walk the high dune paths past beach cafes and quiet chapels. A row of colorful beach huts sits beneath some of the Netherlands' tallest dune ridges, with gentle waves lapping below. The dunes aren't just pretty, they're carefully protected and managed. Kestrels and meadow pipits make their homes among rare plants that grow in the sandy soil. This stretch of the Western Scheldt estuary plays an important role in sediment flow and helps protect the coast from storms. Once a simple fishing village, Zouteland became a seaside resort in the 1900s. A popular Dutch song even turned its name into an anthem about longing and return. The sea here isn't just scenery, it sets the rhythm for everything. Some cities grew fast. Vorkum was shaped by tide, by clay, by hands that left marks in brick, paint, and sail. This quiet corner of Friesland doesn't rush to catch your attention. Located in the southwest of the province, Vorkum stands as one of the 11 Frisian cities that make up the famous Elfstedentocht route. It's among the oldest too, with routes stretching back centuries. Once a bustling trading port on the Zuiderzee, the town now sits inland, but water still flows through its veins via canals, lakes, and the shipbuilding yards where craftsmen work at their own pace. You'll notice the streets here run wider than most Dutch towns. The facades stretch long and low, painted in soft colors that speak of Frisian tradition. In the town center, gabled houses lean gently toward each other, above old trading streets that once buzzed with merchants. Just beyond the center, the Ijsselmeer breeze catches canvas sails in the harbor. Church bells ring out over the steady clink of hammers in traditional boatyards, where scootjes, those classic Frisian sailing boats, are still crafted by hand. Vorkum earned its city rights in 1399 and hit its stride during the 17th century Golden Age. The town became famous for Vorkumer aardewerk, a distinctive style of earthenware pottery that collectors still prize today. Those same shipbuilding techniques from centuries past get passed down in small-scale yards, where tradition lives rather than performs. The Jopi Huisman Museum showcases the self-taught painter's raw, tender portraits of Frisian life. What makes a place beautiful when it barely tries? In Winsum, it's the curve of a canal, the lean of a church, the way the sky never stops arriving. This small village in Groningen province shows you what happens when history doesn't shout. Winsum started as two medieval settlements, Obergum and Winsum, connected by a single bridge spanning a quiet canal. Walk these streets today and you'll find brick houses with hand-carved stone lintels, their details worn smooth by centuries of northern weather. Two windmills stand at the village edges like gentle guardians, still turning when the wind picks up. Picture this scene. A hiker following the famous Peter Pad Trail stops at De Gouden Karper, one of the Netherlands' oldest operating taverns, for a bowl of local mustard soup. Meanwhile, cyclists wait patiently as the hand-cranked bridge lifts for a flat-bottomed boat, drifting through like a quiet thought. Above them, that endless Groningen sky stretches over homes that haven't changed their basic shape in generations. Winsum has existed since the 10th century, sitting on an ancient salt road that connected Groningen to the Wadden Sea. Gothic church spires mix with traditional Groningen farmhouses, while Frisian and Gronings cultures blend in the local dialect and seasonal festivals. The village features regional brick construction that tells stories through subtle architectural details rather than grand statements. You don't fall in love with Eindhoven at first sight, but you might at first spark. It's a city where things are built, tested, and quietly launched into the world. Located in North Brabant, Eindhoven is known not for its age, but its energy. Once a small textile town, it exploded into global relevance with the rise of Philips in the late 19th century. Today, it pulses with startups, engineers, artists, and architects who've transformed it into the Netherlands' center of technology, design, and innovation. Eindhoven doesn't preserve its past, it prototypes its future. The medieval core is mostly gone, reshaped by war and urban growth. In its place, you'll find bold angles, smart infrastructure, and public spaces designed for light, movement, and reinvention. A former factory complex now houses design studios. Cyclists flow through a glowing elevated bike roundabout. In the evening, light art installations flicker above sidewalks where industrial workers once marched. When Philips was founded here in 1891, they started by producing carbon filament lamps. The company soon became a global electronics powerhouse, bringing research institutes, worker housing, and a tech ecosystem that persists today. Even as Philips' direct presence has diminished, its legacy powers Eindhoven's high-tech campus and Brainport region. This is also the birthplace of Dutch Design Week, the country's largest design event. Institutions like the Design Academy Eindhoven have global influence, and the city invests in public art and experimental architecture that blur form and function. Eindhoven isn't about what's been, it's about what's next. The air here is damp and soft. Every step feels like a question. In de Groote Peel, the land doesn't echo, it absorbs. This national park stretches across Limburg and North Brabant, protecting what remains of the Netherlands' once vast peat bogs. Raised bogs, purple heather, quiet marshes, and scattered birch trees create one of the country's most undeveloped landscapes. Centuries of peat cutting shaped this place, but now nature reclaims what was taken. This landscape tells a story of erasure and return. Workers once dug peat for fuel, leaving waterlogged scars across the bogland. But over decades, birds returned. Mosses grew back. Silence settled in. Conservation replaced extraction, and the land began healing in patches. You'll find striking contrasts here. A rusted peat cutter's wheel sits beside a modern boardwalk. Dragonflies hover over mirror-flat pools, where laborers once worked knee-deep in mud. In morning mist, a crane's call might be your only company. De Groote Peel shelters remarkable wildlife. Bitterns, cranes, and snipes find sanctuary in these wetlands. Carnivorous sundews thrive in the nutrient-poor soil, their sticky leaves catching insects. The remaining raised bogs, though smaller than before, still function as spongy, acidic ecosystems that store water and carbon. Peat extraction peaked here during the 19th and early 20th centuries. Today, interpretive trails trace the lives of those peat workers. Elevated paths protect both visitors and the delicate ground beneath. What do you call it when extraction leaves behind something worth preserving? In Reeuwijk, they dug for peat and made a lake district. Located near Gouda in South Holland, the Reeuwijkse Plassen are a network of shallow rectangular lakes, created by centuries of peat digging. Now part of a Natura 2000 area, these lakes serve as both a vital ecological reserve and a beloved recreational escape. It's a rare balance of function and serenity. These lakes were never meant to be beautiful, but they became beautiful by accident, then remained so by care. Today, they must juggle the demands of bird life, boating, biodiversity, and climate adaptation. Each competes softly but persistently. Sailboats catch the wind just meters from greylag geese drifting in reed beds. Cyclists coast along dike paths, while herons watch from submerged fences, half swallowed by water and time. Anglers fish in near silence, while paddleboarders glide past restored marsh islands. The lakes and surrounding wetlands provide essential habitat for waterfowl, amphibians, and aquatic plants. Subtle zoning allows for nature reserves, open recreation zones, and quiet areas for migratory birds. Reed islands and peat soil help purify water and support rare plant species like water soldier and bladderwort. Peat was dug here starting in the Middle Ages, first for local heating, then for larger trade networks. The resulting lakes were irregular until they were structured into rectangles by farmers and water boards, making the landscape a visible grid of labor and water governance. The Reeuwijkse Plassen aren't wild, but they are alive. Sometimes what we borrow from nature can become something worth returning to. The Netherlands is rich, surprising, and woven with stories that bridge the past and future. If this journey sparked your curiosity, hit subscribe. There's so much more of this remarkable country still to explore.